Today I'm going to walk you through how to set up npm Enterprise, which is a neat way for your organization to manage your private node modules. It enables your developers to take all of the experience and best practices that they've developed working with public npm and apply that to managing your private modules. This registry of private modules is hosted on site, so you don't have to worry about anyone having access to them but you. And you can also use npm Enterprise to mirror modules from the public registry. This is really helpful in cases where you can't connect to the public registry, like if there are security restrictions on your build machines, or there's a firewall, or even if the internet is unreachable. You can also choose which modules you want to mirror, either by adding them to a whitelist explicitly or creating rules to automatically filter them. For example, you could choose to only mirror packages which have a license which is compatible with your application. So let's start setting up the npm Enterprise server. For the commands that I'm entering, you can follow along with the written instructions available here. Before we start, you'll need to sign up for a free trial in order to get a license key. And once you have that, we can start configuring the server. You'll want to log into whatever machine you're using to run the server, which should be a dedicated machine. I'm using an EC2 instance, which is running Ubuntu 14. And you'll need to be using the latest version of Node. So now that we have our server set up with all of our requirements, we can go ahead and install npm Enterprise. And then it will download all its dependencies and use some Ansible scripts to build out what it needs. This process can take a while. During the process, it will ask you for the full URL of the front-facing host that npm Enterprise is running on. For me, this is my EC2 instance, plus the port number 8080. The next value that you might want to customize is the full URL of your GitHub Enterprise appliance. npm Enterprise integrates with GitHub for authentication and authorization. This means that you can use the same rules that you have already set up in GitHub for managing access to your packages and reuse them in your private npm. If you don't have GitHub Enterprise, you can just use the default, which is public GitHub, and integration with other auth systems as well as standalone auth are coming soon. So now that it's all installed, we'll want to start the server so that we can start playing around with it on the client. And once it's started, you can test that it's working using the curl command. Now that we have the server configured, we need to configure the npm client to work with this server. So before we start working on the client, we need to make sure that we have the latest version of npm. You may see some warnings about unmet dependencies, but don't worry, that shouldn't be a problem. So now that npm is updated on the client, we can start interacting with the server. And to do that, we need to log in. So we'll specify the registry and the scope that's associated with that registry. The scope will be the name of the user that your organization has on npm. And then we'll fill out the credentials that are associated with the user that we have in whatever GitHub appliance is being used, whether it's your company's enterprise appliance or public GitHub. You may have credentials in here if you have an npm RC file already. Those would be the credentials that you use for public npm, which are probably different. What this has done is added a personal access token for npm on-premises solution in GitHub, and it's also added a line to your npm RC file. That line in your npm RC file ties these credentials to a specific registry and scope, so you won't need to keep re-entering it. If you see this token added in GitHub, then your login should be working just fine. So now that we've logged in, let's test publishing a private package. By default, the authorization for managing a package in npm Enterprise is tied to GitHub authorization. So we'll need to make sure that we have a repo that we have access to. So then we just create our package.json as we normally would, with the required name and version fields. And then there's a third one that's required. Because we're handling authorization through GitHub, we need to specify what repository this package corresponds to. Note that in the package name we used the scope. We actually prefixed our package name with our scope. This is necessary to tell the npm client which scope the package lives in. And now we can simply npm publish as you would with any public module. When you publish something with a scope, it only gets pushed up to the registry that corresponds to that scope. So this has not been pushed up to the public registry. If you want to, you can log into your server to make sure it's been pushed up. So if you look in etc npme packages, you'll see that we have a myco scope, and within that scope, we have our private package. Now that our package has been pushed up to the private npm, the rest of our team can start using that package in their applications. So let's look at how you use a private package. To use it, they simply specify the scoped package name. And I'm going to add another package here from the public registry just so that you can see that we can use these two side by side. And so now if I type npm install to install this app, you'll see that it's downloaded both the private package from my private npm, and it's also downloaded a number of packages from the public registry. If you want to, you can configure npm to only use the enterprise registry and not pull down from the public registry. This is configured on your client or on the build server. To limit it, simply add a registry configuration parameter in your npm-rc file. The advantage of this is it makes it possible for you to limit the npm modules that your team can use to a certain subset. And you can decide what criteria you want to use in deciding that acceptable subset. So in order to make those public packages available from your private registry, you'll need to mirror the public registry. Your list of acceptable packages can either be managed manually using npme add package on the server, at which point those packages and their dependencies will be crawled and mirrored on your server. Or you can create filters which automate the selection process. That's it for this introduction to npm Enterprise, but there's lots more to learn. We'll be adding more videos over time, so keep an eye on this channel.